Hey everybody, welcome back.
Hello.
Um, Thanks for joining us. This is the Kingston Tenants Union live stream. My name is Kyra. I'm a member of the Kingston Tenants Union, and this is my co-host Fox.
Hi, Fox here. How's it going?
It's going. I mean,
It's
it's
summer
going
today.
somewhere. Truly.
We went from
Yeah,
winter to summer in like a week.
it was blizzarding last week.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Uh,
Oh, well, um, today we're gonna have someone call in and join us, who's a tenant in Kingston. But while we're waiting on her to join us, let's introduce the Tenants Union. So the Kingston Tenants Union is a group here in Kingston, New York. We are a group of tenants. We are not funded by anybody other than ourselves. Um, created by tenants for tenants. We're trying to organize here in Kingston and in the larger area of Ulster County, to protect tenants, to create fair housing that's affordable and accessible and safe. Um, and we are not a service based group. We are organizing to create a larger movement of tenant power. Um, Anything to add?
Kira, you said it all. You summed it up perfectly. We're
I've been
not
working on
funded.
it.
We're not a nonprofit. We're not any profit. We're just literally just regular old citizens banding together to fight for the justice that we need as regular working class people because there's a lot of power concentrated within business owners, property owners, and the government, and they're all making the rules for the rest of us. And we want a more democratic society where we get a say in things because we're not getting represented, and our needs are definitely not being met. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Hell yes. Well, today we're going to be speaking with a tenant named Kathy. She's a tenant at the Stony Run apartment complex here in Kingston. It's a huge complex. Do you know how many people live there, Fox?
I don't know off the top of my head. I feel like it's got to be at least 100 units there, if not more. But
Yeah, maybe
um,
Kathy can tell us when she comes on. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
these um, these landlords who bought Stony Run, they're kind of one of the most infamous landlords down in New York City. They're just like complete and utter scumbags. And they first came up to this area like a few years back, and they started buying complexes. They all they do is buy giant apartment complexes. Um, and they first bought some stuff in Esopus. I can't remember the name of that one, but there's Esopus, and then the town of Ulster. It was Sunset Garden, and that's actually how we met Juanita, and she first started doing tenant organizing, and that's kind of how KTU started because they were just treating Juanita like absolute garbage. She would ask for repairs to get made, and they just wouldn't do them. And this is like par for the course of what E&M does is they buy up buildings, they buy up complexes, and then they don't do repairs. They wait until everything just goes to shit, and people either get frustrated and move out, or they find some reason to evict them, and then they'll do like some surface level renovations, and then they'll jack up the rents. Oh,
hmm.
I think we have our caller calling in here. I'm going to let her
Oh, great.
in.
Awesome.
All right.
Hey, Kathy, can you hear us?
Hi, yes, I can.
Hey,
Awesome.
Kathy.
Thank
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm about as good as can be expected.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have you on our live stream. We were just starting to talk a little bit about, I don't even think we said the name, E&M Management.
E&M Management. So,
Um,
yeah, I have
we were,
this article pulled up. I have this article pulled up about E&M Management. This article just kind of like lays it out for everyone of how bad these guys are. I mean, I was summarizing it a little bit, and like Juanita, who is a very vocal member of KTU, she can tell you all about them. Um, but these guys are just they're this is Lakeshore Villa that they purchased, and they've come up and they're buying up all these giant apartment complexes. Stony Run, I think, is the biggest one within the city of Kingston, and they're just buying up all these properties, and they're just doing what they normally do with every complex from down in New York City to up here in upstate. Um,
yeah,
yeah, see,
it
they
sounds
they pounced on the Hudson Valley real estate market because it was just like a sitting duck. Because we have like no tenant protections up here. Down in New York,
yeah,
at least they have a little bit of like rent control, things like that. But up here, there's just open season up here. So
yeah, just a free for all.
yeah,
It sounds like the tactics that they've been using are ones really similar to what I was seeing in LA and what the LA Tenants Union is organizing around. Um, Finding large complexes with mostly low income folks or folks of color who don't really have other options for housing, right? Like these are their homes, they deserve to be there. And to find other places means moving outside of community, moving away from resources, away from jobs, away from their kids' schools. Um, and these developers and these management companies know that, and they know that if they don't do repairs, like people will leave. If they harass these folks enough, they'll leave. Um, and it's awful. I mean, it's like more than awful. I can't even think of a word to use without, I
yeah,
don't know, getting off the internet. But like,
it's
um,
terrible. I have the picture of Juanita's sewage back up on the screen, and
yeah, yeah, and it's all in the name of profit, right? It's all with the intention of getting folks with leases to leave so that they can jack the rents up and get higher paying renters into those same units. Um, which is what we're seeing across the board, and we need to organize in order to fight it because the city is not doing anything, the county is not doing anything.
yeah,
Um, there's really no other option except for the tenants to get together and to start organizing to be able to keep their housing and keep it safe and keep it clean and functioning the way that legally it's supposed to be.
totally.
um, so, Kathy, you can hear us?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So would you tell us a little bit about like your experience at Stony Run? Maybe we could start with like what it was like when you moved in versus what it's been like since E&M took over managing the property.
Okay. A little background. My husband and I moved in just shy of 10 years ago. The kids, flew the nest, and we needed to downsize, and it seemed like a very nice community to move in to, and very friendly staff. The office was amazing. They would bend over backwards to help you. Very, very, very helpful. Maintenance was very fast. You often didn't even have to wait 24 hours to get a service call completed. Everything was done with a smile. Everything was like beautifully manicured and just very, very nice. Rents were very manageable. The terms of our leases were very good. And then around this time last year, 2019, there were rumors going around that a large management company from New York City was coming up and would be touring the property and would possibly be interested in purchasing the complex. And they ended up going through with it, and in July of 2019, everything just started to fall apart. Our maintenance crew was cut down by like 75%, leaving like one guy to do, all the cleaning for all the 28 buildings, one person to mow the lawns, one person to do like any repairs within the apartment, and possibly one person to do like painting and things like that for when the units were turned over. Mm-hmm. And God, the list is endless. They've been just adding things back that were always free. They were now charging for things. It just seems like they want to collect our rents and not put out anything for it. Like, we are literally not getting anything but a roof over our heads, like a box around us, and just everything is falling apart.
Yeah, and I remember you told us that some of your like appliances and maybe the heat were also not working, and they were taking time to fix.
Yes, we have not had a working dishwasher since late last fall. We have not been able to get anyone to come in to look at it. We've offered to replace the unit ourselves, and we were told that was not an option, nor would it be an option for them to replace it. It didn't affect the inhabitability of our unit, so back to hand washing I go. And we've had some fridge issues and some issues with our stove as well over the years. But as I had mentioned before, when the previous owners were here, any issues that we had were fixed very quickly, never any issues. And with this, I don't think we've had one thing replaced or fixed since last year.
Damn. Yeah. That's so wild. I know that there are some things that like legally management and landlords can get away with, like perhaps the dishwasher is one of them where it's not like essential. But I do know that things like the refrigerator, things like the heating, like those are required, the stove, those are required to be functioning. So it's just like wild that even though it's illegal, they're still getting away.
Correct. I do believe they're hoping that tenants such as myself and my husband would possibly not know what is legal and what is illegal, or perhaps they could bully us into basically submitting to them so we wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I mean that's something that like I've seen, and perhaps Fox you've seen also, as like pretty commonplace, that the landlord assumes that the tenant does not know what their rights are or what is legal, or that they won't stand up for what is moral, even if it's not like in the law, in the legal codes of the city. And that's like, I think the main reason I think it's so important for tenants to be organizing, to really be able to share information with each other, to share like the experience of learning publicly about what our rights are and what we can do, and then be able to raise our voices together and put pressure on the management company, on the city, to make sure that they're holding up their end of the bargain.
Yeah, and to echo what you said, Kyra, like I think that's absolutely true that landlords always, count on the fact that tenants will not know what their rights are, be afraid to act on them. And then also there's this culture of like, well, my landlord's pretty nice and I don't want to rock the boat. And I see that over and over and over and over again. And like, I can that means you're a good person, that you're like, you're trying to get along with other people. Like it's a nice reflex to have, even though you're going to be taken advantage of, which I don't like to see that. But the thing with E&M though is that they're not even nice. Like,
right,
they just are unscrupulously horrible landlords. Like, I pulled up, a little search for their properties. So they own Dutch Village, they own Sunset Garden, They own Stony Run. These are all giant complexes in Kingston or just outside of Kingston. And one of the articles that came up was rats are among the latest problem at Sunset Gardens. Rats. Rats. So, like, I hear Kathy talking about appliances, rats. Like, with Juanita's situation where her sewage was backed up, I had that picture on the screen before where it was Juanita's Juanita's whole sewage system was totally backed up. Here's a picture of it, so people can see up close. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, people have to live with their sewage like this. And what E&M does is they try, like, to just put it off and put it off and put it off and wait until people, like, even when people try to, like, go to a lawyer and go through the proper channels to get this stuff taken care of, they will play all kinds of dirty tricks and make people, jump through hoops until they're just tired, and they don't have individual people don't have the resources to fight a giant mega rich company like E&M. And the only way we have to, like, fight back against these guys is to, like, gather up all of their tenants. That's the only way. That is, like, the only way we'll ever be able to fight these guys. Because the other thing too is that our local government is, like, aware of how bad these guys are, but they can't do anything. Like, we tried to get the ETPA passed, the rent control law passed, and they sent out a survey, and they're just like, well, I hope E&M just complies with the survey and doesn't lie to us. But it didn't work out in our favor, and we don't have rent control, and they're laughing the whole time because they know they got away with it.
Yeah. I wonder, Kathy, if you could tell us a little bit about the stuff with your lease. Like, when they bought the property, did you have to sign a new lease?
Well, let's see how to word this properly.
Sure.
Well, the sale was complete somewhere between July and August of last year, and we never heard anything, so we just assumed, okay, everyone's just going to complete the remainder of their leases, with only the new people moving in would be signing with E&M, and then we would all then sign with E&M after our leases would be due to be re-signed.
Okay.
And just before Halloween of last year, we were given a notice on all of our doors that we would need to go to the office. This is when it was still an office. That we would have to go in, and we would have to, what they called, unify our leases. And what it would be that it didn't matter if you had just signed a lease with them, say back in September, and they jacked your rent then. You would have to sign it and do another $100 increase, plus an additional fee of $10 for garbage, which is something that we've never paid for. It was always included. And we were told that if we decided to not sign this new lease, this new 2-year lease, that we could complete the remainder of our lease, but we would not be guaranteed a new lease at the end. And in addition to that, we were told that they also couldn't guarantee that the next increase in rent for us would be several $100s. And months later, we all received notices on our doors again to say that if you have not signed this lease, you are entitled to be increased by 200%, which is a tripling of your rent. So say you paid $1,000 a month, you would then, with a new lease, be paying $3,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn. This is why we need some rent control.
Absolutely.
The bare minimum.
Right, at the bare minimum. There's so much to unpack there. The folks who live in these complexes, to my understanding, are not folks who can easily pay a tripling in their rent. Is that correct?
That is correct. As an example for myself and my husband was injured at work about 12 years ago, and he is on disability, so he does not have the income that we once had, which is why we've had to, move into Stony Run because we had to downsize. We just can't afford to purchase again or have the upkeep of a standalone home. And with the rents the way they are in this area, there's no way we could possibly afford to move. So we're quite scared, to be honest.
Yeah. And another, maybe Fox, you know better than I do about this, but my understanding of what happens for a tenant when a new landlord buys a property is that that tenant's lease that was signed with a prior landlord stays true until the lease is up, and then the new landlord, can work out with the tenant if they want to re-sign the lease.
Yeah, I think so. Kathy, do you know the answer to that? I think
I
that's
believe that
correct.
is the case.
Yeah.
I believe that is the case. However, they use scare tactics against us to sort of force us to sign, saying to us, if you don't sign with us for this new lease right now, we can't guarantee that it'll be affordable when your current lease is finally up.
Well, I
So,
don't think it's a
leaving this
coincidence.
gaping hole, yeah.
I don't think it's a coincidence that the timing that E&M put this message out to everyone, you said was right around Halloween, right?
Correct, yeah.
Which is right before the election, and we just had
Yeah.
a new mayoral election, and one of the bigger issues was getting this ETPA passed, and
Mhm.
we had three candidates. Two of them were conservatives. One of them was Steve Noble, our current mayor. And Steve Noble was the only candidate who was speaking in favor of the ETPA. It still hasn't gotten passed under him, which is unfortunate, and we still need to hold him and everyone else on the council to task. But the other two candidates, Vinnie Rua and I can't remember the other woman's name, but they were just no rent control. It would die if they were in office. They'd totally get rid of it. So that was, I think, a thing that E&M was scared about. They were probably worried that like Steve would be in office, which he is, and that they'd have to. It was just another tactic to try to fight the ETPA before it could even get started. But I mean, they defeated it anyways, which is unfortunate. But that, you know, we lost the battle, but
Mhm.
the war rages on. So
Yeah, absolutely. And um, you had mentioned something to us, Kathy, that like once you signed the new lease, you didn't get a copy of it. Is that right?
No, we have not received a copy
Oh,
since the
still.
day that we signed. It's been, 7 months now?
Oh my God.
And we've received nothing. We've called them. We have left messages requesting that a copy be sent to us for our records. I had my attorney reach out to them to ask the same, and we have also written to them, and we have not heard anything. So honestly, we're not even 100% sure what is in our lease. We were not provided a copy.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, God, and like that they're gonna try something, right? To like pull something and be like, well, it's in the lease or something like that. Or I feel like,
Precisely.
yeah. Oh man, that's and legally they have to provide you a copy. Like that's really,
Hmm.
really
And in
why.
fact, we did ask when we signed the new lease, hey, we would like a copy of this as soon as possible. When will this be provided? And they said, oh, it'll be about a week until, we can mail this to you. 7 months later, we have no lease.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's huge. That's like what?
And also, there is something I need to bring up. And I'm not sure if this is in other states, but I know in New York State, within a certain time frame, again, I'm not exactly sure of how many days or weeks this is, but when you put a deposit down on a place and it goes into escrow, your landlord has to provide you with the location of the bank that the account that the escrow is being held in is, and what the account number is, so you know where your deposit is. And we know that the last owners transferred everything over because we were sent letters to that, but we never received a confirmation of where those escrows were going to. So we don't even actually know if our deposits still exist. And I know that E&M is very, what's the word I want to use without being crude?
You can be crude.
They're very unsavory about doing this, but they have a tendency to not give deposits back, no matter what. They always find a reason to give nothing back to their tenants. So we don't even know if this money exists anymore.
Damn. I feel like that paints the clearest picture of how low they are stooping and like how truly like greedy and evil they are. How, you know what I mean? And I know you have a million examples of it, but I feel like that one specifically really just like paint that picture so clearly.
Yeah, and it's very frustrating that they're doing this. They're blatantly doing this. They're out in the open, almost parading around with a neon sign around them, say, "Look what we're doing to screw our tenants over," and yet nothing is being done, or I don't even know if anything can be done.
Yeah.
So
I feel like it's also extra frustrating because an argument we hear all the time from landlords, especially here in Kingston, like when ETPA votes were happening, and like since then, especially since like around the pandemic and the call for freezing rents, is that landlords, don't have it easy. Like the majority of landlords here are like small mom and pop landlords, like all of these things about like why we should be sympathizing with landlords. And I feel like that's especially the narrative here in Kingston, like because it's a small city. But these complexes that they own are so huge. They have so many tenants. And I feel like if anything, if folks really feel that like landlords aren't that bad or like that they're like also struggling, those landlords should be joining in the fight to get E&M out of here. Like,
yeah, that would be nice.
It would, if I could wave a magic wand, right? Like in an ideal world. We know that won't happen.
We had one landlord help us canvas for ETPA, so I'll give credit where credit's due. That was cool for her.
Yeah, and totally. And she was at a meeting that I was at and met her, and her heart is totally in the right place. And I've never met a landlord like her, like, and I think that really speaks to the power imbalance that exists here and the greed that exists. And it's just awful. I'm sorry, Kathy. Like I'm sorry that you and your family have gone through this, and I also hope that folks listening to this live stream today or like later as it's recorded.
Yeah, I agree. I really, really sincerely hope that my fellow neighbors are able to hear me and know that, we can stand up to this, but we need to be united as a group just so we have more power.
Hell yeah.
And that, if everyone just comes forward and sort of join forces, we could do a lot of damage, but really do a lot of good.
Yeah, absolutely. And create safe and secure housing for all of you. I'm so sorry. I just lost my train of thought.
I'll pop in and just say, like, to speak to what Kathy just said, like, anybody who's an E&M tenant watching right now, and like last summer I canvassed Stony Run, and it's a huge place full of like awesome people, and
Mhm.
people are scared. They were scared last July when we were canvassing. They were like, I heard terrible things about this new landlord. They were worried, and like it's unfortunately coming true. So anyone who's watching right now, I just want you to know that like we know there's like an issue and like you're not alone, and I know it's like so freaking scary to be in the situation that you're in right now. And the only thing that like you can do to help yourself in your situation is to like contact us and like get in touch so that we can start organizing and figuring out what to do. Because I'd like to ask Kathy this is like have any like lawyers or elected officials, like any councilman or mayor, the mayor or anybody, or even at the county level, has anybody been able to, because we basically are all like it's all Democrats, like the mayor's a Democrat, the council is majority Democrat. Has anybody been able to help you at all with?
Not as of yet. I have spoken to our alderman for Ward One,
Mhm.
and I've spoken to him many times. And for the most part, it's all of this is entangled in bureaucracy. Hands
Yeah.
are tied at certain levels, and it's frustrating even for him because he sees everything that's happening to us,
Mm.
and yet there's not a whole lot legally that can be done. So. I think we need to take this into our own hands at this point because if
Yes.
others cannot help us, we need to stand up for ourselves.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, and I've spoke with Jeffrey Morrell, who is your alderman, many
Yes, yes,
times,
that's
and
his name. I'm
he's
sorry.
he's like really sympathetic to what's happening, and he doesn't like it, and he's frustrated. But even though he's an elected official, there's very little that he can do. Um,
Yeah,
the fact that he's sympathetic is good because if, say, a bunch of his constituents stood up and said, "We're fighting for this," it would be easier for him as an elected official than to do what he had to do on his end, because his job is to represent everyone in his ward. And so, if only one or two people come forward and say this, it's not going to be as effective as if like 100 people in his ward came forward, and he'd be like, "This is my ward. You guys have to like do something." So it'd make it
correct.
easier for
Yeah,
him to do his job. But
yes,
I think a lot of people look to the people, the elected people in power and professionals to kind of help, but there's only so much that they can do or want to do to help regular folks out.
Yeah,
correct.
absolutely. Which is like just another reason that we need to organize, right? Like,
I completely agree. Yeah.
yeah, the system, as
Yes,
we've
everyone who's listening,
that,
join Kathy. We need you.
yes.
We need more brave people like Kathy, and like together we're just gonna be so much stronger. I mean, that's what rich people do. They band together. I saw a really disgusting post on Facebook today of a local landlord, Airbnb connoisseur, like landlord who's complaining about his property taxes going up, his commercial property taxes going up during COVID. And it's like, first of all, it's like, boo hoo, cry me a friggin' river.
Right.
And then, like, and then he says, he makes a big post about it, he's tagging all these officials, and then he says, like, oh, I'm gonna contact all the other businesses in the area, and like we need to band together, and like they have solidarity as a class, like the business owners and the property owners, they have solidarity up the yin yang, and they're like, oh, together our voices will be heard. And it's like, we need to do that because there's more of us, we have more voices than they do.
Yeah.
But
Even in Kingston that exists, there's like the Uptown Business Association and like I mean, I was about to say I'm not trying to throw shade. Maybe I am. Like that it's in plain sight. It exists here. It exists on both small and huge levels. It is rich people protecting rich people, and the majority of them are white people, and it's gotta go. Like, we have power as tenants, as working class folks, and we're here doing it. Join us.
Join us, yes, I
Yeah.
know. Well, what's funny is like the culture here is like so like the person who posted this thing, he is somebody who has written letters to the editor opposing Airbnb regulations. Like he's just so bad. But he's a Democrat. He's like a liberal Democrat who's like, the arts and like, you know, it's like the so nobody wants to like go up against that because they're like, but you're so cool in all these other regards. You're like, you're a musician and you're this and that, and you like all the cool stuff uptown. And it's like, we can like cool stuff, but also like call it out when it's there, when it's like greed and you're literally like hurting working class people. You can't
Yeah.
just say, oh, I care about POC and LGBTQ and this and that, and then turn around and like make money off their backs. Like it's
Yeah.
such hypocrisy that frustrates me to no end in our little corner of the world here in Kingston. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's all over the place, but it's like it feels extra bad here in Kingston for some reason.
Well, maybe this is the perfect bridge into another topic we wanted to talk about today, which is um, the reason that like or maybe part of the reason that this environment exists in Kingston, and like what businesses and like nonprofits have to do with that. Before we move on to it, Kathy, is there anything else you wanted to share about your experience at Stony Run? I don't want to move
I
in.
I think we've pretty much covered everything. Some people have worse stories than I do. Some have it easier, but by and large, we're pretty much all in the same boat, on the same level with this. So again, I encourage all my fellow renters at Stony Run to reach out to the Kingston Tenants Union, to just try to come together in solidarity with myself and several other people, and hopefully we can make a difference and, reclaim what we once had. Just
Yeah.
if we don't come together, that won't ever happen. So again, I'm encouraging everybody to reach out as soon as they can.
Yes. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of
Thank
course. Thank you
you.
so much for
Yeah.
coming on and sharing with us. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, I look forward to it.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Oh, wow. I'm so glad that she could join us. I know we've talked to quite a few tenants in Stony Run, and it really seems like the fear is like so tangible and is
Yeah.
like the main reason that everybody is still talking to us individually and
Yeah.
not collectively getting together.
And they have every right to be scared. I mean, these guys, their landlords
Yeah,
are ruthless scumbags. Ruthless. Like,
totally,
you know,
totally.
a lot of people bring up, like, oh, my landlord's not so bad, yada, yada. And, like, they probably aren't all just, like, but these guys are just, they're, like, comically evil. They're so
Yeah,
bad. And people are,
yeah,
yeah, they're terrified. And, like, a lot of the people I talked to last year when I canvassed were retired people on fixed income, and it's so sad to see people like that where it's like they worked hard their whole lives and they're just trying to like retire and live like peaceful, comfortable lives, and they deserve that. Everyone deserves it, but like Jesus, we can't even like how can we treat like our senior citizens this way? It's
yeah,
horrible. It's so horrible.
totally. It's like the same case in my building on a much smaller scale, but like the majority of the tenants are folks like senior citizens on fixed incomes, some with physical disabilities, mostly folks of color, and the landlord is just jacking up the rent and like getting them to willingly leave, right? He's like, it's like more like he's willingly displacing them.
Yeah.
Um, and it's bullshit. These folks don't have other places to go. These folks work close to here, don't have money for, cars, or aren't able to drive cars. So like the placement of their housing is super important. The price of their housing is super important, right? And
Yep.
it doesn't exist comparably now because all of the rents are going up. Um, so there's nowhere to go except for outside of their community.
Yep.
It's it's horrible, and it's just happening on such. I mean, my building only has 17 units, right? Like E&M is like hundreds and hundreds of units now that they have between all of these complexes.
Yep.
And it's horrible.
They're the ones calling the
Yeah.
shots, and all these developers too that are coming in and buying all these buildings, and and then you get these people who've been around, like this person that I just, oh god, I was so mad today when I saw that, and then everyone in the people that I know in the community, like talking to him and saying, "Oh, you're right. That's so sad. That's so sad that your rents, that your property taxes are going up during this time." And it's like, these are like the people, like the reason your property taxes went up is because you made the area like desirable for people to come and stay at Airbnbs. You fought regulations for Airbnbs. You wanted the value of your property to go up. Now it's going up. Now your taxes are going up. So like, you want your cake and you want to eat it too. And these people think that everyone else in the world has to just lay down so that they can have their way. And it's
Right. Totally. It's so fucked up. I'm wondering how much I should mention by name, but there's a business here, a restaurant in Uptown Kingston, and the owner of it is Charles Blakeman, who is mega rich, buying up so much property, displacing so many tenants. I worked for him and was like stunned by the treatment of the staff. It was horrendous. And he is getting huge tax cuts right now for employing people in the pandemic. And I am pals with some of his employees. They're doing delivery routes, Fox, to Kerhonkson, like out past Saugerties, like over mountain roads, way the heck in Bumblefuck, like
doesn't
the
your food get cold by that point?
I think it's mostly like things that you're gonna heat up in your oven anyway. They've like packaged it that way, but these folks are they're getting 2 hours of work. They're making $40. Nobody is tipping them. When food was delivered, nobody is tipping them. Nobody's paying them for gas or for the use of their own cars for this work. And it's on payroll. So like taxes, it's not even a full $40. It's probably like $35. And it's so that richie dad Charles Blakeman can get his fucking tax cuts. And it's knowing that the employees are so desperate for income during the pandemic that like they'll take them up on the offer and like do the delivery routes. And knowing that he's not paying them any, like, what difference does $40 make when like you have your car insurance because you own the car that you're driving for him? Like, you know what I mean? It makes my blood boil. I was hearing about this week, and the outright like greed and evil going on is just so infuriating.
Yeah, but he's a cool guy, and he deserves to get free murals on his building from the O Positive Festival. So he's woke as hell. He's a nice guy, right? Uh,
He's a good boy.
it's
Nice guy.
brutal. It's brutal. I put up
Brutal.
a screen right now on one of the KTU blog posts where we go through all these like mega rich people who are buying up the city of Kingston, and we did like a little infographic map, and I have Charles Blakeman up right now, and you could see he basically owns half of like uptown Kingston. He's
Yeah.
starting to move into Midtown. Midtown's going to be the next spot
Yeah.
that's going to be gentrified. I mean,
Yeah.
it's already getting gentrified, and
Totally.
it sucks. It really sucks.
Yeah.
But
Well, I went down to a Beale Street with Alex, and like just looking at how many buildings he bought over there downtown was like just nuts. And all of them were like, oh yeah, we already got 90-day notices that we have to vacate. Um, that was a while ago. That was like a few months ago. So just
this
horrible.
you said was on a Beale Street. This is Blakeman property on a Beale Street. Okay, so he's expanded into downtown too, then, huh?
Many buildings. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, did you say 90 buildings?
No, many. Sorry. Many,
Oh,
many.
it's like damn, 90 buildings.
Like, are there 90 buildings on a Beale Street? I don't know.
Probably not on a Beale Street. But that's where Armadillo is. I think the restaurant Armadillo, which
Yeah. It was right on the corner of like Broadway and Abeale, where if you turn right heading towards the water, there's that building that is now all Airbnbs. It was like
yes,
all apartments, and now it's
right.
all luxury, like short-term rentals.
That's right, because our former county executive sold that building to Mike Hines sold that building to Charles Blakeman. See, this is why, like, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. These guys are all crooks. They're all working for the same team. They just wear
Yeah,
different colored shirts sometimes. Like, they're not working for us. They're working for each other. But
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And the only power that we have is if we're united and organizing together.
yeah,
Um, but okay, maybe this is a good segue into what I said was a good segue before. Um, there's just so many forces, I think, in Kingston that deter people from organizing. I think these are intentional, like whether all of the participants know it or not.
yeah.
Um, Something that we talked about last week, and you and I have been talking about, honestly, that you've been teaching me a lot about in Kingston because I didn't know that this was going on, um, or like to the extent that it was going on, which is large. Is that all these nonprofits are here, right? And they're all funded. Did It's almost all of them, right? Are funded by the Buffets.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some that aren't. But like I mean, his dad's the third richest man in the world, so he's got like more money than God to play. I mean, he'll say Peter Buffett will defend himself and say he only gets like 5% of like whatever. So there's controversy going on now too because his endowment, like the money he can use at Novo, is tied to Berkshire Hathaway stocks. So now that the stocks have dropped in price, he's pulling funding from a bunch of nonprofits, and they're all getting angry at him because they're like, "What? You don't all of a sudden you don't care about women and people of color?" And because that's what he
Mm,
likes to fund. He likes to fund all these nonprofits that are like about girls and women and people of color and indigenous people. And all of a sudden he's like pulling the funding out, and they're like, what are you doing, man? Like, we need it now more than ever. And he's like,
yeah,
he'll be like, well, I mean, he
yeah.
writes like Medium posts about this, but it's, in my opinion, a load of bullshit. Um,
Yeah, well, and that so clearly demonstrates or like illustrates that his interests are not actually with Indigenous people, women, other folks of color,
mhm.
LGBTQ folk, like, and the fact that he funds all of these nonprofits makes it so that those nonprofits can't speak out against him or
Yeah,
like do things that he doesn't agree with, right? I.e., tenant organizing,
right.
like labor organizing. Um, it's wild that this pandemic is like highlighting so many like systems of inequality that exist. But maybe it's kind of cool that it's also highlighting like the true
Yeah.
interest of this funding and this man, since he has his dirty little fingers and everything.
Yeah, literally. Like that's why like it's great that we have this stream now because it's like everything else is like Radio Kingston is completely funded by Peter Buffett. So that if you're controlling the media, you're controlling the message, and you're just. I mean, there's this term called manufacturing consent, and like that's when the people in power are also in control of the media, and so the people who should be informed, like the regular everyday you and me, people who are getting their news and information, their message is getting controlled by the people in power who want to stay in power. So it's like they distort the message, and everyone's like, oh no, this is fine, like Radio Kingston is doing a community fund for COVID, where you have to
Yeah.
apply to them. You have to get your landlord to write a letter to them asking for $500, a cap of $500, which nobody's rent is that doesn't pay for half of most people's rent. Like most people pay double that,
Yeah.
and and you have to like ask your landlord for a letter.
Yeah.
Like you have to basically go up the chain of command, and
It's crazy.
it's
That's so crazy. It just like couldn't perpetuate more the power dynamic that a landlord has over a tenant,
like
right?
what if your landlord's like, no, no, I'm not going to write that letter. You have to come up with all the rent,
Yeah.
like, and then
Or
you're exposed to your landlord. You've exposed yourself that you're like, oh shit, I don't have the money to pay rent, and then like
yeah,
it puts people in a very bad position.
it's just it's not in solidarity. It is not coming from below. It is like the top feeding the top.
Yeah.
Um and it's I guess I want to name like it's not to say that like there aren't folks in these organizations in like this web that like what am I trying to say? I don't think that they're all bad intentioned. I
Right.
don't think that they're all well intentioned, but I
Right.
think you're right that there's this very like big brother, like the media is controlled specifically, and like the common understanding or like common feel is that like these nonprofits are doing good work, and like band-aid work is good work, and like um it's not thought about deeply or critically that like the funding is so important, and like mm, intentionally is deterring folks from doing like real grassroots organizing work. um it's also weird because a lot of it is labeled as grassroots organizing work.
Yep.
Like,
Or like mutual aid. But I mean,
yeah.
I think what happens a lot is like leftist and socialist terms get co-opted, or there's a term called recuperation. Things get like people are like, "Whoa, that sounds cool," and you're like, "Yeah, that's because it is cool." And they're like, "Oh, well, we're gonna use it, but we're going to liberalize it." There's this term called neoliberalism, where
Mm-hmm.
everything operates as a market to be bought and sold and traded. So, and then everything turns into a commodity. So you have these terms that are really cool socialist leftist terms like mutual aid and solidarity and all these things, grassroots, progressive, and they get like distorted and used because they're cool and people know that they're
Right, they're
cool,
like
but then they get used
trendy.
by the wrong people, and people don't know the difference, and they're like they don't know what mutual aid actually means, or they don't know what grassroots actually means, then they become it's easier for people to get tricked into thinking that that's what the rich people are doing, but they're using the they're using these cool terms that everyone likes, yeah, to wash over what they're actually doing, which is making money. They're exploiting people for, you know, their basic human needs, which is like housing, healthcare, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Access to like any resources, access to work and income. Um, you said it well, Fox.
It's something I think about a lot.
Amen.
I know it's hard here in Kingston, and you know, I'll be fair that like a lot of people I think take my message as like, oh, you're criticizing me, and we're trying to do this cool thing, and like, and it's I always want to emphasize that like your heart is in the right place, guys. Like, I'm not criticizing you. Like, let's just look at this aspect of it. Let's take all the good things and like use that to actually build power, and like not let the people in power like, you know, take advantage of our
Yeah, like
generosity and our good nature.
totally. You're not criticizing the individuals that you're speaking with. You're criticizing like the larger, enormous systems of oppression that are at work in everything, right? And like
Right.
asking to think about those critically as they affect like an individual's work and behavior and time and
Yeah.
energy, like where they spend it, you know. Um, but I feel like it helps those systems when folks take that personally. Like for if you were to say like, Kyra, you know, like your work at the nonprofit is totally like done with the right heart, right, with the right intention, but like let's look at the funding of that nonprofit, or let's look at like XYZ about it, and I'm like, Fox, like I'm very offended. How
Yeah.
could you say that
Right.
to me? I'm doing the good work here, you know.
Right.
um that helps perpetuate what's going on with a nonprofit, right? It's like
Yeah.
when white people get mad because they're called racist,
Right.
and they
Exactly.
take it personally and they get defensive about it instead of saying, you know what, thank you so much for calling me into that. Like, I think there was some like white supremacy living in what I just said, and let's dismantle
Yeah.
that together. Like,
And you know, maybe the next step is like, I mean, and it's human nature, right? For us to get defensive and like, hey, puppy, for us to get
right,
defensive, like it's just human nature because nobody wants to be criticized and like, but
right,
maybe what we need to normalize is like feeling that sort of like, oh no, you know, but then like sitting with it and being like, all right, now I've had a chance to like think about what you said, and you know what, you're right, and I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to be complicit in this.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah. If there's an environment to talk about it rather than like cancel a culture, right?
right,
Like, I think I think it's important work, and it's important in organizing to be able to like talk with each other that way. And I think um, it's kind of like fundamental in there for me, you know.
totally,
But I think it's also like language that we can use in every day, you know, with friends, with family.
yeah. You know what
Otherwise,
might help too is like for people like us to talk about our experiences of being like of learning about what how we've been complicit in the system that oppresses us all. I mean, I've
mm,
worked for like I used to do work for a pharmaceutical marketing consultant.
wow,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, like,
yeah,
but I didn't know. Like, I was just
right,
like, oh, I'm making, you know, I'm making decent money, and like, they're
mm,
nice people that I'm working for, and
sure,
you just you don't know. Like, you don't know what you don't know, and we're none of us are born knowing all this stuff. We grew up and like we're taught how to survive in a certain way, and then we just do our best.
hell yeah, hell yeah, we're still just doing our best.
I'm sure there's
um
stuff now that we'll look back and be like, oh my god, I can't believe I was doing that. Like,
yeah,
shit. But
totally.
Yeah,
It's lifelong work. It is a lifelong process.
it
Um,
sure is.
yeah. Well, it is 6:01.
We got into some good stuff today, though, huh?
This was some good stuff. Absolutely. I'm so glad Kathy could join us. Again, if we still have folks watching who are from Stony Run, reach out to us, message us on Facebook, go on to our website, kingstontenantsunion.org, and reach out to us through the site. Um,
I'm
we'd
gonna
love to
try to
talk.
put together a special page for E&M tenants if y'all want to like reach out. We can start connecting folks in a safe way because it's
Oh, yeah.
scary. It's scary to reach out. Um,
Yeah.
and it, by contacting us, it's a risk, but sometimes you got to
Yeah.
take a risk. But we're gonna do our best to protect everybody. That's what we care about. We don't make any money, and we never will. This is never going to be a nonprofit or a for-profit or a business of any kind. So
Absolutely. And there's less risk if more people reach out. So if you're
yeah,
watching this and you are living under E&M management and you're nervous about it, like just remember that if all of you were to reach out and organize together with us, with each other, um, there'd be so little risk involved. We're stronger when we're united. Um, and we have a lot of power when we're united. So go tenants.
people
We got
united will never be defeated.
mm, it's true. It's true. Cool. So thank you everybody for watching. Fox, thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Alec,
Kira,
thank you for doing what you do behind the scenes.
our little producer over there.
Yeah.
You're getting a shout out, buddy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the recognition.
Alex.
I hope everyone's enjoying this hot summer day. That we're finally having some nice weather.
It's hot. I'm about to go get a popsicle, to be honest with you.
That sounds good. I'm about
All
to crack a
right.
beer.
Hell yes. It's time.
A cold boy.
Cheers.
All
Thanks,
right,
everybody.
Kira. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Have a good evening.
Bye.